So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Dan. So welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Hello. Hi, everybody. How are we doing? So this is a strange thing. So I've sat there and I've watched Corinne's presentation, and I listen everything that the society do. We're huge fans of. It was a privilege for us to be involved in the same awards ceremony as them last year, and I would also say that so much of the presentation that you've just seen from the Alzheimer's Society. The work that is needed on the ground to support people living with dementia can only really be done effectively by an engaged social care workforce. And obviously that's going to be the thing that I move on to talk about. So from a scheduling perspective, we're sort of the right two presentations to come after each other. I would also say if there's a follow-up one and you wanted to do a double header, I would love to be involved in a double header with the Alzheimer's Society. They're a great organisation. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our sector. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our organisation and also a little bit about the journey that we've been on. There are no slides. It's just me in an office in London talking to you about our organisation. And I think probably the sensible place to start is to give a bit of background on the sector that we're involved in, because many people don't know about adult social care. Lots of people will have seen media exposure for care and care workers, and many people will have been stood on their doorsteps on Thursday night clapping for carers during the pandemic. But the vast majority of people in society don't really know about adult social care until they either work in the sector or they receive care for a family member. So to give you a bit of background, I guess. So the workforce in adult social care is 1.59 million people. About half of those, about 800,000 people, work in my side of social care, which is the domiciliary care market, the home care market. And home care is care which is delivered in people's homes rather than in a residential care facility. So basically carers attending a client's house to provide care in their own home. Now, we are a sector with a substantial number of people challenges. According to Skills for Care, which is a recognised voice within the care space, there are currently 111,000 vacant jobs in adult social care. And that's 111,000 vacant jobs in a sector where demand is growing, and it's growing exponentially. I think there are many people who will be involved in the conference today who are working in positions where they're dealing with people, who are involved in looking at how you will resource an organization and the valuable role that people can play in building an organization. And many of us will share the challenges that come from the demographics which are affecting the country. We've an aging population, which means we've got a reducing workforce. But I think for many people who are involved in sort of how do you solve that conundrum, the demand that is being created for their service is not also driven by the thing which creates the shortage. But for our sector, that is very much the case. The thing which is leading to the untold demand for the service that an adult social care provider will provide is the baby boomer demographic. That cohort of people in society are coming to a point where they're starting to need some care and support. Now, we don't have an aging population because of increased life expectancy anymore. Actually, life expectancy is slightly declining now. So that demand, that extra demand is coming because there are just lots of people in that generational cohort, and those people are coming to a point whereby they need care and support. So that is creating a lot of demand for the service that we deliver. In the next 10 years, the figures show that the number of over 80s in the UK will increase by 50%. Now, the support requirement of that demographic is that we need more people working in social care, not less. And the problem that we've got is that our workforce, along with lots of other workforces in the two generations that follow the boomer demographic, are smaller. So there are fewer workers, not only in retail and hospitality and logistics and facilities. There are also shortages in social care in that respect. But I think the other thing to then think about in terms of our space is that the challenges that we face as an industry have been driven historically by the experience of work that care workers have had. And in some respects, the way that they've been treated by the organisations that they work for and also the industry that they work within. And I'm going to talk today a little bit about some of those pressures. But those pressures have led to, according to the Home Care Association, in the last 4 years, 619,000 people leaving the workforce. So not only have we got an increasing demand, we've got potentially a shrinking workforce, and we've currently got a shortage of 111,000 people in that workforce. So that's the background. That's your history lesson on adult social care to get you up to speed with where we are. I guess why my organisation, as the host correctly said that I started from my dining room table. Why we started in the way that we did was because of a personal experience of care. Exactly as I've said to you, people don't really know about social care unless they've worked in the space or they've had care for a family member. That's exactly as it was for us. My mum's mum, my nan, was the person who needed some care. And my nan was more than just my mum's mum. My dad was pretty absent when we were kids, which meant that my mum worked full time. And my nan had a really active role in raising me, my brother and my sister. And she had arthritis for about 15 years in total. The arthritis started in her hands and her wrists. And unfortunately, for the last 18 months of her life, it was in her spine. And one of the challenges that go along with spinal arthritis is an increased risk of falls. We used to call them Nan's turns. The social worker wasn't quite as glib about them as that. There was a chance that my nan could have fallen and it could have been dangerous for her. So a social worker recommended a care provider, and we took that recommendation. And we said that we wanted someone to provide some care at 8 o'clock in the morning and at 9 o'clock at night. And that care provider said that they did half-hour visits, which we didn't question. And in the first 8 weeks of care and support, we had 15 different carers visit my nan's house. We had a constant revolving door of new face after new face after new face. And I always say my nan had a northern sense of humour about it. I'm from Sheffield in South Yorkshire. My nan was also from Sheffield. She used to say she only knew she was getting care when the blue tabard showed up. She didn't know the people because the faces inside the uniform were changing all of the time. She had a relationship with the uniform. The faces changed, but the uniform was a constant. And as an aside, as a mark of respect to my nan, at Visiting Angels, we don't believe in uniforms. I want our clients to recognize their caregiver by face and by name, not just because they're wearing a blue tunic. Okay, so that was really important in part of what we did with the organisation. But if I go back to my nan, we had ongoing issues for over 10 months, in truth. And then, unfortunately, tragically, on a Tuesday morning in February 2011, I took a phone call from my mum to say that the carer hadn't attended and that my nan fell. And she had a brief period in hospital, and unfortunately, she never returned home. So, as a family, we felt grief, we felt loss, we felt a lack of agency, we felt that we were ignored. The service that we received was absolutely not where it needed to be. But I didn't blame the carers. We didn't blame the carers. We could see that the problem there was staff turnover, and ultimately, staff turnover is the biggest issue in our sector as a whole. In the domiciliary care space, staff turnover, staff leavers can be anywhere between 70 and 80%. If you've got 100 carers working in the organisation, 70 or 80 of those might leave every single year. And that constant churn of people was always problematic because it led to people being new to a job or not really knowing as much about the client that they were caring for as they should have done, or having to have a uniform because there wasn't a personal relationship, but there was a uniform relationship. But actually what's happened over the course of the last 10 to 15 years is that the challenges that face the workforce have meant that it's no longer possible to have a high churn organisation and easily find replacements for the large numbers of leavers that you've got. Now the people are in relatively short supply. So that's really what led to, a big idea is a very dangerous thing to say because it wasn't a big idea. It was a big idea learned over 10 years of experience and refined because I was thinking an awful lot about the space that I occupied and worked within. But I guess the light bulb moment was in summer 2017 when I think I became the first person on the planet to use the words carer-centric. And what I mean by that is that we put our caregivers first. We are genuinely a people first organisation, which in many spaces, that degree of focus on workforce development and the engagement that people have with their work is something that's not necessarily new. But in the home care space, we found that we were the only people having this conversation. My market scoping for Visiting Angels, when we looked at launching the organisation, I looked at nearly 50 care providers when I did that, and not one of them had a people-focused mission statement. If they had a mission at all, the mission was focused on clients and care delivery. They wanted to be an outstanding care provider. They wanted to be the care provider of choice. They wanted to provide care the way a family member would expect it. Nobody was focusing on their people, and I thought this is bonkers because this is the biggest problem we've all got. Right? So either when you focus on your people, it doesn't work, or no one's had that idea yet. And thankfully, it was the latter, not the former. So very proud to say in summer 2017, that's when we finalised what that meant and what it looked like. What it means to be carer-centric. Well, we love our carers. And it's a difficult thing sometimes for people to hear and to talk about when it comes to the workplace. But the reality is that the work that a caregiver chooses to do means that they sacrifice an awful lot. It's one of the hardest jobs that somebody can choose to do, in actual fact. And as a result of that, we don't believe they deserve any less than the absolute love of the employer that has engaged their services. So we love our carers. From a business perspective, tactically, when we're making decisions as an organization, the best description I can give you of being carer-centric is that we ask ourselves the question, if we do that, does it improve the life of a carer? Because if it doesn't, it's not carer-centric, and as a result of that, we just don't do it. Irrespective of how much profit we may make doing it, if it's not carer-centric, it's not in line with our vision, and we don't do it. And I think probably the best way of describing being carer-centric is that we try to see the world through the eyes of a caregiver, and we try to do something about improving that world. And so many bits, I guess, the obvious commercial levers within the organization were founded in that proposition of, well, asking yourself, well, why do not enough people in society want to do this work? And, of the 800,000 people working in adult social care, half of them, 400,000 people, are on 0-hour contracts. The organizations that employ them complain about staff turnover, but they're not extending any loyalty to their people, and therefore why should they expect any loyalty in return? So we thought, well, we absolutely can't do that. We need to have a proper contract, not a 0-hour contract. Now, overwhelmingly, the work done by care workers was done at minimum wage. Actually, there's a significant body of evidence to suggest that a number of the workforce are paid substantially below minimum wage. But we took a view that we wanted to pay well above minimum wage, so pay of 13, 14, 15, 16 pounds an hour. Very often in the care space, care workers are not paid for their time when they're transitioning between visits. So we wanted to pay for travel time. We wanted to guarantee pay increases. We wanted to provide free life insurance, free car servicing. We wanted to provide free car valets. So many of these things are things that we thought, well, let's think about this from the caregiver's perspective. How can we help them? What can we do to ensure that we're supporting them better to help them to do the valuable work that they do for our organisation? So we launched that organisation as a single office in Sheffield in January 2018, and we currently have 77 locations across the UK. We've gone from 0 or 1 as employee number 1 employee to now over 1,700 people across the UK who work with visiting angels. We're one of the fastest growing home care providers in the country, and thankfully we've done all of that by being carer-centric, by putting our people first. I think what we've tried to do operationally is we've tried to recognise, again from a carer-centric perspective, some of the challenges that care workers face. And I think, in a world of virtual and distance working, this is an interesting concept and conversation. But when we started the organisation, that wasn't something that was a thing. Most people used to go into work and had a group of people that they worked with and had an environment that they were familiar with, and would have a water cooler moment where they chatted about football in the previous evening, or what was happening on a soap opera, or what happened on Saturday night TV. There was a chat there with colleagues that you spend time with. Now, overwhelmingly in the domiciliary care space, that just doesn't exist, or didn't exist. Home care workers are remote workers. So they will go from home and normally get up at very early in the morning, maybe 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, get up, go out, visit another person's home, go to a client's house, provide care, do it again and again and again and again, and then go home back to their own home at the end of the day. So they have no contact at all with the organisation that they work for. And we thought, well, that's problematic, because that's low touch, which is low connection, and it's difficult in that situation for people to see how much they're valued. So what we've tried to do with the organisation is to increase those touch points. So we have instances where caregivers come to the office for nice things, coffee and a cake, or a car valet, or a physical training course rather than a digital training course, because it gives you a chance to interact with people. All of those are excuses to build relationship in a sector where historically there's not been an awful lot of focus on building relationship. Even the job of work itself we looked at, and we looked at this with a view to trying to drive down the staff turnover rate. And we work with a clinical psychologist at Liverpool John Moores University looking at workplace stress in the home care environment. And what was identified was that the role of a carer may be 20 to 30 visits per day, where they have too much work to do in too little time. They don't have time to get the closure of seeing a job of care well done before they then rush off on a time-stressed transition to get to the next client to have exactly the same pattern repeated. And, very simply, the office I'm sat in now has got windows, and the guys that clean the windows here get the job satisfaction of standing back from a clean window and going, oh, I cleaned that glass. most care workers weren't getting that closure on the instance of care that they were delivering. Now, if you do that 20, 30 times a day, 5 or 6 days a week, that creates PTSD-like symptoms in people. So we wanted to reduce the instance of that. So we have a minimum 1 hour visit, not because it's better for our client, but because it means the care worker gets that closure. They don't have too much work to do in too little time, which enables them then to be able to be satisfied that they've been able to care in the way that they want to before they move on to the next visit. I think the other thing, again, we identified in looking at those work patterns is changes in rota in high staff turnover businesses are problematic. The care workers may have 5 or 6 instances per week, if they're unlucky, maybe 5 or 6 instances per day, where they're going to visit a client that they haven't been to previously, because staff turnover means that somebody vacated that call. And then what the care organisation is doing is placing a new carer into that visit to make sure some care takes place. Now, if we think of that first visit as a first day at work, there is a natural stress associated with first day nerves, right? We don't know where things are. We don't know how the coffee machine works or where the loo is or what the fire drill looks like, or all those other bits, the nervousness, the apprehension that goes with that. If you're a care worker and you're facing that 5, 6, 8 times, 12 times a week, that again adds to the stress and anxiety that you feel in work. So we, from our perspective, decided with a stable rota of the same carers visiting each week, there would be less change for the caregivers who were working for Visiting Angels. And that again would give them more certainty of knowing what their working week looked like. So those were really important things about thinking about how the job was delivered and changed in order to be able to ensure that we were able to drive down staff turnover. Now, what does that look like? Well, I mean, it's as an organisation, we're a 91% staff retention business across the UK. Our staff turnover rate is 9% across the UK, against an industry backdrop, as I say, of anywhere between 70 and 80% staff turnover. So that delivers a market benefit to the organisation because we've a reduced bill on recruitment. It means we've got more stability in the organisation. It means we're able to deploy lots of the money that we would have spent on recruitment and training and onboarding into retention initiatives. As an example, we run 4 events a year, which are family events. And part of the reason we do that is because when a caregiver is caring for Visiting Angels, that they're probably not caring for their own family. If they're out in the evening helping a client to get to bed, they're not putting their own kids to bed, as an example. So we run events which are events for family to be able to thank our people, but also to be able to thank their families, because when they're working for us in the evening, that family member is lending them to us. So we've always had Christmas parties and Easter egg hunts and summer barbecues and a fireworks party. And for the last 4 years at my Sheffield office, we've had a live music festival called Carefest, which was free for all of my people to attend and their families to attend, and also free for every other care worker that worked in South Yorkshire to come along to as well, so that they could also feel celebrated in the way that we felt it was appropriate for them to be celebrated. So these are some of the practical things that we did as an organisation to work differently, I guess, the things that we've done, that we've learned along the way and that we've improved along the way. We've been relatively successful in doing that because we've embedded the carer-centric vision for the organisation. Our mission when we launched was to become an employer of choice. I mean, I will freely admit we cheated when we did that, because not many other people had people focus in their mission, as I'd identified by my research. So I'd set the bar quite low. We're currently on a mission by 2030 to be the largest care provider in the country, and we want to do that by being a people-first organisation. So we want to be carer-centric and we want to be the biggest employer in our market. So we are growing at a rate of around about 100 new carers joining us every month, and that is giving us the ability then to be able to scale the organisation to what will eventually be anywhere between 15 and 18,000 care workers working for Visiting Angels across the UK. Very proud to say that we're doing that because we're carer-centric. But in order for it to be successful, we needed to ensure that it wasn't just an idea in my head and then a thing that me and my team, my close management team, did when we started. It needed to be something that worked across the entire country. So we actually developed an inverted organisational chart, so an upside down organisational chart as a way of illustrating the importance of a care worker in the Visiting Angels business. I'm the founder of the organisation, and as a result of that, I'm the least important person in the organisation. The larger we get, the less important I become. I'm slowly working my way towards obsolescence. Eventually, there'll be a day where I'm just not needed at all. And our care workers are shown very clearly at the top of that org chart as the most important people in the organisation. And I think the interesting thing then is what happens when you get into the middle order of that sort of what would be traditionally middle management. How are they viewed, and what what is their role. And the reality is that their role is to serve the people above them in that org chart. The people who are more important than them in the org chart are needing them to support them. My role is to support the people directly above me. Their role is to support the people above them. Now, what that then leads to is that we get engagement with the vision for being carer-centric right the way through the organization. It's possible within Visiting Angels for a care worker doing an evening shift to be so impressed by the work one of her colleagues does that she rings the office and asks the office to send a thank you card to that other caregiver. That's a caregiver being carer-centric. That's the ultimate win when it comes to how well the vision's been embedded. It allows people at any one point in time to understand that we're all there to serve, and ultimately every one of us is there to serve the people who are delivering care in the community, the care workers who are the most important people in the organization. It's led to us seeing things and hearing things that we needed to do things about. I mean, we developed a workplace program for our caregivers called Angel Care, because our angels are our visiting angels are the caregivers, and Angel Care is our care program for them, where we have an app which tracks their well-being. We've got reflective practices and mindfulness techniques also within that. We've got access to training material in there. We've also got access to talking therapy through that. And these were things that we developed because we were listening to people, and COVID wasn't easy for anybody, but in our space specifically, COVID was very challenging. And we responded to that by coming up with a PeopleFirst solution. And part of the way it's also embedded into the organization, and we're now 77, 78 offices across the UK. And every time we get together collectively, one of the first things we do is a carer-centric roundtable. So rather than a sort of an introduction, hi, my name is and my business is wherever else, we have the senior leaders within our organization coming together and sharing the most people-focused things they've done in the last 3 months. They're carer-centric great ideas, and they're a really passionately engaged with process, which enables everybody constantly to be thinking about ways of improving the experience of work in Visiting Angels, right? We're always thinking about the next great thing we can do to improve the life of a carer. And again, that's really, really important when it comes to just moving the dial on that. That's about language, it's about practice. I think that the final thing I would say is that very often our people focus and the carer-centric vision for the organization is misinterpreted by people that don't understand that also then brings a client benefit. One of the consultants that I asked for advice on the business before I started it, I sat him down. He said, "Look, your carer-centric thing's genius, Dan, because it differentiates you as an employer. But the problem is, what's the USP for the client?" And I said to him, "Well, David, you've never bought care, have you? Because if you had bought care, you would know that family is really interested in the quality of the caregiver that delivers that service. So if we're not being carer-centric, we're not going to have the quality people that we need. We're not going to have enough people, full stop. There are 111,000 vacancies currently, right? And we're not going to fix that by taking carers from our competitors. The only way we're going to fix that is by encouraging some of the 619,000 leavers from the care workforce to return, or encouraging some of the other 34 million people that work in the UK to join the care sector and work in a job that they wouldn't have previously done. Now, the only way of doing that is to make the job more attractive, right? So he was right in some respects, but actually what he missed is that the real USP for our clients is that because of the stability in our workforce, our clients overwhelmingly get the same carer visiting week in, week out. And we're the only organization in the UK which allows our client to choose their carer. Our clients are basically given the choice of who they invite into their own home. And that's only possible because of the stability we've got in the workforce, because of us being a people-first organization. If I had high staff turnover and they chose Tracy as an example, Tracy might leave next week and then I'm left with egg on my face. So it's only possible for us to deliver that huge benefit to the clients who receive a service because of the people focus that we've got as an organization. So hopefully that is a run through from what was in summer 2017 my dining room table to what is now a £37 million a year business with 78 locations across the UK and 1,700 people. I've got considerably more grey hair than I had when we started the organisation. But I hope that there are some bits in there that people who are listening to this conference, who are attending this conference, can take away and maybe think about how they might apply to their organisation. But that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Dan. That was absolutely brilliant. Really, really fascinating stuff. And it's really wonderful to hear from someone at your level who really gets this stuff, right? Because I quite often have the taxi driver conversation where, say, this is my lifelong work, and a taxi driver conversation, and people say, what is it you do? And I sort of explain what I do, help, workplaces to get it right with their people.
Yeah.
Quite often I can't believe I have a job, because for me, it's so, I'm not going to swear, blindingly obvious, right? And yet I get calls from companies saying, oh, you know, we've got incredibly high turnover. And it's like, just get it right with your people. Yeah. Everything else will follow. It's obvious. And yes,
no, Emma, I think there's three things in there.
Right? Yeah.
I think there's three distinct things. I think sometimes people are so close to the problem that they can't see a way around it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I was afforded the luxury of enough time to do a proper market scoping exercise and could think about this with a blank sheet of paper. I didn't have the hand in my face to look around, so that made it a little easier. Okay. I think I would say, without swearing, that the vast majority of received wisdom is not particularly useful. And there's an awful lot of received wisdom gets recycled, and that's problematic, because if you're not innovating with your people, you miss out. Yeah? And the final thing I would say is it's an absolute privilege for me, irrespective of the relative lack of importance of me in my organization. Right, I'm at the bottom of the org chart, so I'm genuinely the least important person in Visiting Angels in the UK. It's lovely for me to be involved in not only the program that the Inspiring Workplaces ran for awards, but also for this conference, because it's nice to be surrounded by people that actually get it, people who speak the language and recognize that we are talking about a societal impact of generational cohort theory, right? So forget whichever politician might think they're important enough to do something about changing this stuff. We're talking about social demographics. And as a result of that, if you're not people first, you are not at the game.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, it's wonderful to hear from a like-minded soul. I think you're being very modest, and I think we need more CEOs like you. So the more you can spread the word about the people first approach, I think the greater benefit we'll have across the whole of society, right? Because when we get it right with our people, everything else falls into place. So thank you so much for your presentation. Really appreciate it. And again, be great to carry on the conversation at some point. But we are slightly over time, so I'm going to move it straight on now. So thanks, Dan. Enjoy the rest of your day.